mortals ever glimpse what you're about to see.
So I've got Ali with me, who's reviewing Baldurs Gate 3 for us. Now, something to point out from the start, Ali's only had 3 days to actually play this and review this, and it's a 75 to 100 hour to a 100,000 hour game, technically. So at the moment, Ali is in Act 2, he's 22 hours in, roughly. Ali, in this absolutely huge game, and this monstrous task that you've got, as a review in progress, how are you finding it? Like, your initial thoughts 22 hours in?
It is the most D&D game there has ever been. It's just this, it's captured this idea of what Dungeons and Dragons can be at like a really high level, really well played version of itself.
And something that we're doing as well, you're also going to be doing a live blog, which is going to be interesting. So we're going to have it up for a week. Any little bits that Ali finds that's interesting, or little tidbits or things that change his perception, or things that he likes or doesn't like, will be updated in the live blog. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not just me as well. I think that one thing we want to show off is not just like, here's what my experience with the game is. The way I experience it, playing with my own character on a first playthrough, playing like roughly a nice person, is going to be completely different to how somebody playing like a chaotic evil build with like all the most miserable and harsh ways you could do it.
But something really interesting that you mentioned about this, that you're finding very interesting about this game, a huge part of this game is about the things that you miss as you play.
So it does that classic thing of, this is not unique to Baldur's Gate, but I do enjoy it, where if you choose to do one thing rather than another, the clock will move on and you'll have to deal with that essentially. So at one point I was told, here's a character that's been trapped under rubble, and you have the option to go and save them. And depending on how you've chosen to get to that point, you may or may not choose to save them. I didn't have much skin in that game at that point, so I went to do a boss fight instead. I found that boss fight kind of difficult, so I took a long rest afterwards. And after that, I found that the character had just died beneath the rubble, and I never spoke to them. And again, this is something that Larry had talked about, where you can just miss whole chunks of this game, like it'll drop out. In one interview I did with lead writer Adam Smith, he says something about, there's this character in Act 2 who's supposed to be very integral to the story, and on an early playtest, she died. And she got crit 3 times in a row or something, and she was just dead before they'd even had a conversation. And the game then has to and can adapt to the void that that character potentially presents in the game. So there are big versions of it, there are medium versions of it, and then there are tiny little bits and pieces. Like, one thing I keep coming up against is I don't have anybody small in my party. Like, I've got 4 full-size humans, like a big tiefling. Nobody can shrink down realistically. I don't have anybody with wild shape or find familiar or anything like that. So I keep coming across little gaps and little tunnels that I can't get into. So I've got no idea what's behind them. I'll never know that on this playthrough. Maybe I'll find a familiar spell or a multi-class into something at some point. But realistically, I don't know if that's ever going to happen for me on this playthrough. But if I'd chosen to play a druid rather than a bard, I would have had, I think, more access to those parts of the story.
The other thing that you said that was great about the story was how mature it is with handling relationships both in your party and the people you meet.
Yeah, like you say, it's mature, it's grown up. It's not just that process of, I'm going to give them gifts, or I'm going to say the right thing at the right time. Like, I'm going to pick the deliberately schmoozy or sexy dialogue choice. The people that the characters that you're talking to in your party, their opinion of you changes with the stuff that you do in the world and the decisions that you make. And even if you have kind of attempted to build up a relationship with a character, you might make one action that makes them kind of chew you out the next time you talk to them. It's not like you're infallible in these situations. There are nice little details where they turn around and they might react to stuff that you do in the world based on the relationship you have with them. But also, you're not kind of locked into one path from really early. It's not like, say, you could draw examples from The Witcher where you kind of have to decide which romance arc you're attempting to go down. It does generally feel like I could be talking with one character and flirting with them, but then if another character's interested in me, they'll talk about it and they might say, I don't care about your relationship with that other person, let's just have a bit of fun. Or they might say, hey, actually, because you've been with other people, I'm not really interested in that. And it's like, it's this whole web of interpersonal relationships and interpersonal reactions that do react to not only how you act in the world, but how the world wants to act with you and how you fit in with those characters and how they're presented to you and what your character is like, what you're playing as well as what you're doing. It feels like actual relationships, right? Like it's not just, it is not just you have made more friends with this person. Like it's an up and down. It's like a real life relationship. Sometimes you're more close to people than at other times, but a lot of room to maneuver within a group of people and a group of characters that are flawed and have their own preferences and are a little bit messy. And I think that's just really interesting to see.
It's clearly we're getting to that next level, next generation of RPGs. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with stuff like Starfield and then like Elder Scrolls. How is the story in general?
Story in general is a little bit difficult to say because I'm only in Act 2 and I'm told that Act 3 is as big as Acts 1 and 2 combined. So to give you a full sense of how long that's going to be.
So check the review in progress.
The success of the side quests and the more interpersonal moments and the decisions that you might make there, those are really good. Like they are really well designed and they really fit that Dungeons and Dragons idea. It never feels like you're being taken out of your story, but sometimes important things are happening to your companions and you're supposed to be a spectator, but it never feels like you've been yanked out of it. It's just feeling like, well, I'm giving this person the chance to take the stage for a minute and I'll watch and I can chime in and all of these things. So I think it's good. I think it is successful act by act, but as a kind of whole branching thing, it is definitely trickier to know how successful it's been.
Yeah. So you said about the combat, it's the most D&D that there's been so far. Now, obviously, people who have played a lot of D&D will love getting into the nitty-gritty of this and min-maxing characters, and that's great. You guys know what the combat's going to be because it's basically very D&D. Can you talk about it, if you can, from a point of view of somebody who hasn't maybe even played D&D at all or much and is interested in Baldur's Gate? Because I have a lot of friends, people who are like, they're like, oh, you know, this is kind of like an easy entry point into D&D. Can you talk about the combat from that point of view? If you haven't necessarily played D&D, is it relatively easy to get a character and pick one that isn't too complex, but then because you're also managing other characters, so even if you pick, say, a fighter who you're like, well, hit thing with big stick, but there's also, in your party, you're not going to have a party of 4 fighters, are you? So you are going to have to manage other classes, probably, in this game, or work with them. How is that?
To put the mind of some people at ease, potentially, you could have a party that's you as a fighter, a companion as a fighter, a companion as a barbarian, and then somebody else. So if you want to play full martial classes, then that is an option. So I would say that if you've played any turn-based strategy game, you've got a decent grounding in how combat is going to play out. So sometimes those are going to be full-fledged classic RPGs like old Baldurs Gate or Pillars of Eternity, or even like the Wasteland series has a similarity. Like you have a certain amount of movement in a turn and you have an action and you probably have a bonus action, and so you can make a big attack and then maybe you can take a health potion. Like, so in that sense, like character by character, combat is not too complicated. You can very much go, here's the moveset that I want to achieve with this character, and you know what the archetypes of most characters are going to be, right? Like, you know that a rogue is going to be probably attacking like more sneakily. You know that a fighter is going to be hitting hard. You know that a wizard is going to be casting spells. The problem lies in things like spell slots and in things like reactions and in things like had an example in like proficiencies and the items that you choose to build. Like I had a really cool rogue build at one point that was all about lightning charges. So it's like if I hit a person, I develop a lightning charge, and every time I get lightning charges, I get temporary hit points, and then there's a chance I do more damage off the lightning charges, and when I build up X many lightning charges, I do extra damage and all of this stuff. So that was a really cool little build, and I could use that. But then I got myself into a situation where that was no good. Like that was not successful for the boss fight I was in. So I was having to kind of change that build up. But that's where the complexity comes in, is where you're kind of going, here's a character that I'm building in a certain way to do a certain thing. And there's a lot in character creation and in the level up stuff that people just might not be familiar with. Like, what's the best subclass to take on a fighter or on a rogue and all of these things. I would say that broadly, do the thing that you think is the most cool, and just pay attention to like what things are telling you. There's a huge amount of information that you can take on and a huge amount of stuff that you can do. So bear in mind when you pick up a weapon, like, can my character actually wield this? Like, double check that, because if you want to change it out, if you find that you get into combat and you're holding a greatsword, but you're not strong enough to do that, it's going to be a full turn of swapping that greatsword out for a short sword until you can actually do something with that character again. So you do have to pay attention to this stuff. You do have to kind of read ahead to some extent. Can
you respec your character or change your character statistics or what your class is?
You can, but it means you need to find a character called Withers relatively early on, and they'll be in your camp once you found them. So it's very easy to do that.
The other thing that I'd suggest as well is we are going to have on GamesRadar so many guides on this, because I know the guys have been playing it. And so I guarantee you there will be, quote, beginner builds or easy builds, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but like simple builds that if you haven't played D&D before, you haven't played Baldur's Gate, you haven't played Divinity Original Sin, or some of these ones that Lauren done before, these builds would be the ones that you could start with that will ease you into it, and I guarantee you'll understand it soon and you'll be able to play with this stuff. But initially, to keep it simple, I guarantee you will have some builds out there that help you out.
In the interest of getting through the game quickly, I've been playing a bard because my persuasion and deception bonuses are incredible. So bard has high charisma, which means that their various speech skills are very strong. And that means that there are ways around combat. I've played a ranger and a cleric, and like the bard has definitely given me the most interesting ways to play.
The other thing that I've been absolutely bowled over every single time I see it is the graphics and how good this game looks. Like the character creator, the little details in the world, the animations of the spells and the fight. Like does it still look amazing?
I do think it looks better. Like, this is obviously only on PC. I haven't played it on PS5 for when that comes out next month. The world is so dense, so deeply packed. Like the environmental storytelling is fantastic. The characters, like when you're having those big moments I was talking about where, you know, a character kind of pours their heart out to you. Like, yeah, it looks great at every level. Like it's so massive in terms of what it's been able to put out and like how deep some of it goes and how labyrinthine some of the areas are. And yeah, all of these places feel genuine, feel lived in. Like a lot of them are kind of run down or ruined, but they've adapted for that. Like, yeah, it's looking really good.
I don't want you to give it a score, but because again, it's a review in progress, so please check that out and check out the live blog to see if you're interested how the game pans out. But in general, you'd say 22 hours in Act 2, you're impressed and you're quite happy with it.
I don't often lie in bed at night thinking, can I just get up and play some more? This is definitely one of those instances, like everything just feels genuine and heartfelt and authentic to itself even now, and I know that it only has capacity only to grow out from where I'm currently at.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, I not to put a score on it, but it's certainly going to be there in Game of the Year conversations.
Okay, great. Well, I feel sorry for your sleep being disturbed, but I also don't pity you that much because you're getting to play it. So yeah, if you want to read the review in progress, you want to check out the live blog, you want to check out all the guides, go to the GamesRadar website and like and subscribe down below if you like this video. Thanks very much. And Ali, good luck with the next 50 to 75 hours.
Thank you so much.